What up guys, JP back at you once again, bringing you guys another video. This time we are doing and launching a brand new video series, a weekly video series, wink wink. I wink wink because I'm so bad at weekly stuff, but it is Ranking Wednesdays. Similar to Top 10 Tuesdays, which we do on Tuesdays, which I will be starting back up again. It is a countdown, but it is not of a specific genre. It is actually a ranking of a franchise. So it could be any franchise from the Witchcraft franchise, which has like 1 million sequels, all the way down to like Candyman, which has 3 total films. The reason for that is because sometimes I just want to be able to do an easy 1 to 2 minute one, which would be something like Candyman, versus a long one like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. And let's face it, I'm gonna run out of big franchises. So everything is on the table, and basically how I'm gonna do this is based on memory most of the times, because a lot of these times I'm not gonna rewatch the films to rank them. So it is possible that these change in the future, and I might have to do an updated version. It is based on favorite scale and not based on quality scale. So if I rank these films from least to greatest in terms of quality, that would be a different list than me ranking them from my least favorite to most favorite, because your favorite doesn't necessarily equal to be what is the best film. That would be a different list that I could do, and maybe will do in the future, an actual, from a more objective point of view, like which of these films are the suckiest to the best. But right now this is just my favorite. So let's get into Ranking Wednesday, and this is going to be episode number 1, A Nightmare on Elm Street. I just decided to go with that one. It's a popular franchise that everybody knows, and it's one that is pretty fresh in my memory from all the countless times that I've watched these films. So, I do have the nice Blu-ray set here, but I'm not going to be ranking them with the Blu-ray set because what am I going to do? Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, you know? Can't do that. That's the one bad thing about these slim pack sets is you don't have something to show up in videos. So I'm bringing out the old school, awesome DVD set. This is one of the first sets that I ever got, and I absolutely love this thing. Of course, didn't have all the films because a remake came out after this set was released. I believe the Freddy vs. Jason also came out after that set was released. So with that said, guys, let's get into Ranking Wednesdays. Starting at the top, this is my least favorite in the entire series. It is Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. Freddy's Dead just is a film that has potential, yet it is just blown. I have been on record saying that I actually like this film. Then I talked to Moods for a long time, and it came up time and time again, and I really realized that I think I wanted to like it more than I actually did. I love the concept of the last Elm Street kid, and he's, you know, Freddy's sending him out to bring in more people, and every town has an Elm Street and stuff like that. That's golden. That's good stuff. And I even like the almost like dystopian vibe you get in that town in Elm Street, in Springwood rather. It's, you know, creepy and things like that. But then you just have this way over the top comedy where it's literally a cartoon. Like it literally goes into a cartoon world. It also has, you know, like cartoon sound effects, and it's like wasted potential. Like the idea was strong at its core, the last Elm Street kid and this and that, and bringing more souls to Freddy, and finding out a little bit more about his backstory was all cool, you know, seeing him as a child and then as a teenager. That was neat as well. It just missed the mark so much on the over-the-top comedy, not to mention his makeup looks garbage. And I do actually really like some of the kills, like the ear kill and things like that. It gets under my skin, or in my ear, and that's all good, but it's just not a good Elm Street in terms of they just weren't thinking it through enough. They really banked on the fact that Freddy had become this pop culture icon, and it just bombed. So yeah, that's Freddy's Dead. It's now my least favorite. After that, we have A Nightmare on Elm Street 2010. Now this film is one that, had I been ranking this list by quality, this film would be higher on the list, because it's technically not a terribly made film. My issues come with when comparing it to what we know, which is hard not to do because we know it so well. And it's also hard not to do when you literally copy the same scenes. So if you're going to remake specific scenes, then you open yourself up for the criticism of the comparative nature of the two films. This film always annoyed me with the casting of Nancy. People often talk about Freddy and the casting of Freddy being awful with Jackie Earle Haley, and then you hear people always say, like, I hated the film, but Jackie Earle Haley was good. I think neither of those are really true. He's okay. That's purely what it is. But the real bad casting was with Rooney Mara as Nancy. I mean, this girl couldn't be more bland. She is the definition of bland. Her boyfriend is more interesting than her. Like, I was like, can we just slide over and like just have the camera more focused on him so we can like just deal with his story with Freddy, because this chick is whack. She's not good. And I've always hated her more than anything in the film. She just doesn't have that girl next door vibe that Heather Langenkamp did. It feels manufactured and emo. I just don't like it. Then you have scenes like the Freddy's face coming out of the wall, which is just absolutely atrocious. It is utter garbage, because it was done better, I don't know, 20 plus years before that, because it was done with latex. The problem is it's such a simple effect and it looks terrible with CGI. It looks absolutely dreadful. If you put those side by side, anybody in the world will tell you that the one on the right, which is the CGI garbage, looks awful. You have no excuse for that. You cannot put that in the film. It cannot be in the rough cut phase and be like, oh yeah, I think we should keep this. No, you look at it and you're like, oh my god, like, that's awful. And you get rid of it. You get rid of it, or you reshoot it. You do not put that in the actual end product film. I love the concepts of the mini nightmares. Those are really, really cool. That was the one thing that they brought fresh to the franchise that I was like, okay, this is cool. A lot of people say they hate that Freddy was, oh, was he innocent? Is he not innocent? Like, that was great. I don't know why people criticize that. That was fantastic, because it actually, you thought for a minute, you second guessed. All these other times, you knew Freddy was a bad guy. But to actually second guess it, they made the right choice in the end with what they did in terms of he was a bad guy, spoiler alert. But the concept that they were able to get you to question that was good. So there are good things in this film. There's some cool moments and dream sequences. The overall product is not, they go in, people say, oh, they made Freddy dark and scary again. It's like, no, they didn't. They made him less comedic, but he was still the same one-line Freddy. I was just petting him, Nancy, and Freddy sounds just as emo as Heather Rooney Mara. So it's a film that is not as bad as it gets hate for, but it's definitely not as good as the people that actually like it say it is. It's an averagely done remake. It's not well done at all, and that is my second least favorite. Now we move on to, I guess, this is still one that I don't absolutely love, and that is Wes Craven's New Nightmare from 1994. This is just one that, to me, it never really grabbed me like it does other people. It feels very removed from the Elm Street universe, and that's because it really is. I mean, you have familiar faces, but they're not really the faces that we know. They're the actors who played them. They're playing themselves. They're real-life versions, kinda. And that's always kind of thrown me off, like, because I didn't like that these aren't, it's not set in like the Elm Street world. It's set in the real world, and it's a completely different idea. This is a real, like, spin-off film. It's not really a sequel. It's not really a remake. I guess you could say it's like it's a spin-off. It's a reimagined spin-off of the Elm Street universe. It's not even that, because it's not the Elm Street universe. It's like the After Effect. It's really one of the most unique sequels ever done. It really is. But I just don't love it. It's just something about it. Like, I don't like the kid angle. Like, I hate that kid. I hate him. I've always hated that kid in this movie. I don't know. There was something about it. There's cool moments to the film, but it really has almost like a Child's Play vibe to it, with the kid and the doctors taking him away and stuff, and Nancy's sort of like Andy's mom, Mrs. Barkley, and stuff. It's just not done as good. But it really reminds me of that a lot. The meta stuff in it, though, really, really interesting, ahead of its time. You know, 1994, Scream was another 2 years away. It's definitely a precursor to Scream. I just never fully got on board with the concept. Like, I get it, and I think that it was interesting, and I think that it does have its place. I just didn't love it. It's just not one that I love. I like Elm Street the way it's done, with the teenagers and the falling asleep and the stuff like that. This was completely different, which I'm glad they made it, because you do need a little bit of difference in a franchise to keep it fresh. And for its own thing, I do like it, but it's not classic Elm Street, so that's why it's so low on the list. I know there are a lot of fans of that one, though. Coming in next, we have A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. To me, this one is, I like it because it's the last one to truly have that Elm Street vibe to me, that Elm Street vibe that I love, which is one of the reasons I love these films. But Part 5 to me also has the weakest characters. It has the most boring storyline, in my opinion. Like, it's not the storyline, it's like the most boring interaction of characters. That's what I love about the ones that'll be in front of this film, is that the interactions between characters is always fun. It's always, it's more fun. Like, these characters are boring with each other. They almost feel as if they're, you know, uninterested to be there, sort of, you know. Even before things go down, when they're hanging out at the pool and stuff, they just seem lame. They just kind of seem like they're a little lame. The concept with the Dream Child was alright. You know, the idea that Alice is pregnant, so Freddy's invading the dreams of her unborn child, because she's been able to prevent them. I kind of like that. That's cool. I do like the continuation of the Alice storyline. As a story itself, it's alright for an Elm Street film, but the in-between is just not my favorite. It's actually my least favorite in terms of the classic Elm Streets 1 through 5. It's alright. It's one that also I hate the kid in. Like, can't stand the kid. He's annoying as fuck with his dark eyes and whatever. I cannot stand the kids in the Elm Street films, apparently. Alright, following that, we actually have Freddy vs. Jason, which I recently said in the previous film that this was the last one to really capture the Elm Street vibe. I would probably say that this is technically the last one, but it's an odd sequel, though, because it's not, you know, part of that original thing. It does capture the Elm Street vibe pretty well. Not perfect, but, you know, it's there. It's there when they're in the school and the town covering it up. Like, I like that stuff. Like, honestly, like, people crap on this film a lot, and yeah, it's not the best film, but anytime somebody mentions, like, the bad things in this film, I mention the good things, but then I also say, like, alright, dude, like, you have Freddy and Jason in the same movie. That is good enough to be an awesome thing, you know? Like, that is so cool to see them on the screen together after, like, a decade of wanting that to happen, after a decade of sitting in classrooms talking, oh, Freddy would beat up Jason, no, Jason would beat up Freddy. I mean, it was truly amazing when that happened, and I went and seen this film in 2003. It was epic. It was 100% lived up to every expectation I had. I was mesmerized by the film. At the drive-in opening night, I was stoked, and it lived up to it. After the years went on, like, I've noticed that there are some really dumb choices in this film, like the pinball stuff, but my main thing that I've always liked about this film is I honestly really like how they brought them together. Freddy invaded the dreams of a, you know, sleeping Jason, because Jason's never truly dead. He's just in hibernation, and pretends to be his mom, sends Jason on a killing spree in Elm Street, because that's what his mom told him to do, and he just does whatever she says. And then he doesn't stop killing because Jason isn't something you can turn off. Like, so it pisses Freddy off and they fight. Like, that's a decent enough storyline. And on top of that, you wonder why the hell Freddy can't kill people on Elm Street anymore. It's because they forgot about him. The town's covered it up. They stopped the dreams. Like, that's a decent storyline. It's better than what most people could come up with. I like that. I've always thought that the storyline was really good. And I actually do like some of the characters in this film. It just has its problems. It really does. It's messy, and there's just certain moments that you wish was toned down a little bit. And you wish that there was a little bit more of actual, like, history with the characters. You know, a lot more of like the canon things that had happened to them. And god damn it, like the very fact that Kane Hodder is not in this film like takes it so many steps down, because he was Jason at that point, and even now today, like I feel like the film would have been better with Kane Hodder, 100% better. So yeah, that's Freddy vs. Jason. After that, we have A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. This is Freddy's Revenge. A lot of people hate on this film. I like this film. It has lots and lots and lots of plot holes in terms of the rules that we know in Elm Street 3, 4, 5, and so on. But the rules weren't as established with the first sequel, so you do have to give it a little bit of, you know, space, because this is not the same story. This is not Freddy invades Jesse's dreams. Like, this is Freddy wanting to come into the real world and sort of mending the gap between the dream world and the real world. So there are a lot of moments in this film where you're like, oh, well, how the hell would that happen if nobody's dreaming? So, but you have to keep in mind that these rules weren't 100% established at this point. They were like 80% established, but this film was taking the films in a different direction, and it had it keep going this direction, these would be the rules and the first one would be the exception. It's just because later the sequels changed the rules back to what the original were that, you know, made them the rules and this the exception. If you kind of watch it in that mindset where it's like, okay, well, the rules aren't really 100% established because this is a follow-up storyline where Freddy's like now kind of dead, but he like wants to come back, and he's like, you know, trying to be resurrected almost into the real world. He was doing that through Jesse, and that, I love that concept. Not to mention, this one is so dark. This is the darkest Elm Street. It's more dark than the first one. It's more dark than the third one. It's more dark than the remake. This is the darkest Elm Street, 100%. This one scared me more than the original when I was a kid. It really did. It's like when he's like, you got the body, I've got the brain. Like, that shit freaked me out when I was a kid. Not to mention, I think it was starting to like turn me gay a bit because of all the total homosexual undertones in this film. Like, oh my god. I even as a child, like, I thought that some things were weird. Like, I remember watching it on VHS, like second generation dubbed VHS, and like when like the gay bar, and I was just like, what the hell? Like, this is weird. This is not what I'm used to. And you know, now I love that stuff. I think it's hilarious that, like, I try to spot like everything that could be considered gay, and it's funny. Like, I love it. I love it. It's definitely like one of the gayest horror movies ever made, but you know, that's cool in my book. Elm Street 2 is fun, man. It really is. There's problems. It definitely has problems. 100%. Lots of problems in this film, but it's scary Freddy, and it has a cool Elm Street vibe. And we get to see Freddy do like things that we never seen him do before, so that's cool too. I love Elm Street 2. It really is one of my favorites. Alright, top 3, baby. Coming in at number 3, we have A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, The Dream Master. This one's a personal favorite of mine. I mean, I grew up watching this one. I've probably seen this one more than any of them, but that's because this is the one we owned on VHS. This is the one that we would return to all the time. We'd watch it on VHS. You know, the characters, I loved them. I loved, I actually seen this one before Part 3, so it was really cool to see Part 3 afterwards, and then like see, oh, this was continuity and stuff. And yeah, this one, it has similar problems in terms of like, this is where Freddy really got over dramatic and stuff, but I actually like the kills in this one. I like the characters a lot more in this one, like Rick and the weightlifting chick, and of course Alice, Kincaid and Joey, even though, you know, Kincaid's death is really cool though. It really, really is. Like, I love how they sort of resurrect Freddy in this one a bit. It doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense, but like how it looks when he gets resurrected is dope as fuck. It's one of the best scenes in the movie. I like the concept of Alice being able to absorb like certain attributes of her fallen comrades. That's pretty cool. In all honesty, like, this is just one that I grew up watching, and I'm very nostalgic for it. Like, I love Elm Street 4 because it's the one that I watched the most growing up. Coming in at number 2, we have A Nightmare on Elm Street. That's right. This is the original classic. It's one of the greatest horror films ever created. Had the ending been a little bit better, and had Freddy never got to the level that he did in terms of comedy in the sequels, this might be considered the best horror film ever made, because its creativity is second to none. I mean, it is genius. The very idea that Wes Craven not only thought up the concept, not only thought up the backstory of the killer, not only thought up the way that he looked and the weapon that he used, like one of those things normally happen, but like all of the things that made Freddy and made A Nightmare on Elm Street a Nightmare on Elm Street, like the very idea that one guy thought all of that up is insane to me. It's stuff that you just, it's like creating, it's like the Big Bang. It's like creating something out of fucking nothing. Even though there was influences and things like that, it's like, I don't know how the fuck you create this character. It's genius. It truly is genius. It's one of the most interesting characters ever created in film history. And it all started in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1. It was, I love this film so much because it is so genius, and the very idea of like this dream world, and when you first introduce to Freddy and he's like people say that it looks cheesy now when he's like running down the street. Dude, that's scary as fuck. That is scary. That is scary to me. It always been scary to me. When he has the really long arms, like that is freaks me out. I'm like, what the fuck is that? Why is that? That's not fucking real. That's imaginary. And it's like, it's scary because like there's no reason for anything to look like that. Like it's out of a nightmare. It's awesome. Like I love Elm Street. I forget how good this film actually is until I go back and rewatch it. And it is brilliant. Love Elm Street. You can't really say anything bad about it besides the ending. And finally, we go into A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. The Dream Warriors. This is by far my favorite film. This is the first Elm Street film done up a notch and with a better ending. That is what this is. Freddy is not cheesy as fuck. Like, he has a few one-liners, but they're not over the top. They are toned down perfectly to where it's not too much. It's definitely not. A lot of people hate it and give it credit for creating Funny Freddy, which it did, but at the same time, like, this was not too much for me. Like, he always said things. He's always said, you know, like, you've got the body, I've got the brain, and stuff like that. But, you know, even, you know, it's just a great movie. Like, I love the concept of the Dream Warriors where they're all in the dreams together. It's something new that we hadn't seen in the franchise before, and it's really cool that they each have their own powers. I love the setting in the mental hospital. Absolutely 100%. That is so cool. The deaths are cool. The dream sequences are cool. I love all the characters. Nancy returns. The adults actually believe the kids in this one, and they're helping them because Nancy's there helping. You know, it's really, really a cool film. Not to mention, the ending makes so much goddamn sense in terms of like a magical like scenario ending of like, okay, like, well, what would make sense to kill this guy, and it works, and it ends properly, and there's a cool like stop motion skeleton fighting scene straight out of Jason and the Argonauts. Like, it's awesome. This has a good soundtrack, which I forgot to mention in Part 4, one of the most reasons I like that one. This one has a good soundtrack as well. It's everything that the first one is turned up to 10, and the ending's better. Like, it's exactly what you want out of a sequel. This is the exact definition of how to do a sequel properly. If this one would have been Part 2, this would have been like the perfect sequel. It's still the perfect sequel at Part 3 though. Absolutely love it. And that is Ranking Wednesday, guys. I pretty much just did an entire podcast on the Elm Street franchise out of memory. I'll see you guys next week with a little bit of a shorter video. Peace.